All right. Hi, everybody. Dr. Paynter here, along with Dr. Amelia Barrett for our Point-Counterpoint. So today we're actually going to be talking about SSRIs. Should you or shouldn't you? Dr. Barrett is going to take the con stance. And while I agree with her point of view, for the sake of argument, since it is point-counterpoint, I will be taking the positive stand and giving a little reasoning why SSRIs can be helpful. So Dr. B, do you want to start or shall I?
Yeah, absolutely. So SSRIs have been studied in many, many different high quality studies, randomized controlled trials, and they do not consistently show a benefit in terms of reducing migraine frequency or severity. So I think that is the main reason that I typically don't recommend using them if your only goal is to reduce the migraines. There just isn't enough data. Now, there are some other types of medications that fall into the antidepressant, anti-anxiety class that do have some decent data, but they bring in another neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. So SSRIs just work on serotonin. The SNRIs work on serotonin and norepinephrine. And so those tend to be a better choice if you're trying to treat migraines alone or in combination with many of the mood conditions that go along with migraine.
Yeah. Can you give a couple examples of what a serotonin or what an SSRI is versus an SSNRI for anybody who's watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So SSRIs are things like Prozac, Paxil, paroxetine, Zoloft, sertraline, Lexapro, Celexa, citalopram. I'm trying to throw out like generics and brand names. And then the SNRIs are, a combination of some older drugs and some very new drugs. So the older drugs would be things like amitriptyline or Elavil, nortriptyline or Pamelor are some of the ones that we use most often. And then the newer ones are things like Cymbalta or duloxetine, which has really good benefit in lots of different kinds of pain states. But it's the presence of that effect on the norepinephrine system that seems to give you the benefit for pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, great. And that's kind of what we do or we look at from an ND perspective as well, is obviously we want to do some things that are going to help those biochemical pathways, those serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine pathways. But we also like to do it in alternative ways to medication. But that being said, I'll take the pro stance where, medications can be useful and they are tools for us to be able to use. And so as Dr. B mentioned, it might not be a first choice for actual migraine control. You might not notice it helping with that, but there's something to be said for treating the anxiety and depression that can come along with a condition where you're in chronic pain. And so taking it to help control the mood can actually kind of take that stress off of your body and help you find alternative options for treating your migraine, as far as either medication options or natural stuff. Dr. Barrett, myself, we're big into dietary things and lifestyle changes, yoga, meditation, stuff like that. And sometimes taking on those SSRIs, those medications, can be helpful in motivating you to actually do some of the things that we know do help with migraines. And so sometimes you can kind of get stuck into that cycle of you don't feel good, you feel really depressed, you are not motivated to do any of the things that you should do, but you just can't get there, right? Because, who's motivated to do stuff when you feel like crap all the time? So in that regard, that can actually, and I've seen that clinically, be very helpful. Not and let me back up a little bit. It's not directly treating the migraine, but I guess you could argue it indirectly treats the migraine, because if you do feel well enough and more motivated to be able to do the things that actually make a positive impact in the migraine state, then that can actually be a really, really beneficial tool to use. Anything to
Yeah.
add to that, Dr. B?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the brain is a mind-body organ. We have to treat
Yeah.
at the level of the mind as well as the body. So if you're able to, shift the experience of one thing by pushing the lever on the other. I think that's a step forward. I'm curious though, are there natural or herbal supplements that affect serotonin that you have found to be helpful in your practice?
Yes, for sure. So, one of my favorites actually is kind of a melatonin 5-HTP combo. Although that's kind of cheating a little bit because melatonin actually does have some research supporting its efficacy against or with migraines. So there's a
Yeah.
little double duty there, but 5-HTP and melatonin together can actually help to boost serotonin levels. Usually you have to take them more often, more frequently during the day because they don't last as long as medication does. But that can definitely be something to help. St. John's wort is a well-known and herb that actually has been studied to be as effective as SSRIs in depression. So that can be something that is very useful, and it's just an over-the-counter herbal. Again, usually have to dose it 3 times a day. The thing though is, and anytime we're talking about serotonin and serotonin boosting stuff, I always have to mention the threat of serotonin syndrome. Just for anybody who's watching, if you are on an SSRI and or you use triptans and then you take supplements or herbs to boost serotonin, you can set yourself up for something called serotonin syndrome, and that can actually be deadly. So you really want to make sure that if you are looking at some of these other options and you are on some of those medications that affect the serotonin pathway, you do have to talk to your doctor about them before you start them. They are not benign supplements or herbs. And so it can get you into some trouble. And I've seen that before, unfortunately, someone who wasn't doing it properly and hurt themselves. So, so please make sure that you clear any of those types of supplements with your doctor. But those are the best studied ones and the ones that I usually use as go-to. And then of course, there's things like Depraloft and Travacor and all kinds of different nutritional supplements that have things to help support GABA serotonin pathways just for general mood support and that as well. And those can be really helpful too.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Well, we hope that was helpful, you guys. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat box for us, and we'll be happy to answer as we see them. All right. Bye, everybody.